So we are live. So welcome everyone to watching this, our core Facebook Live, specifically on the shadow feminine, what it is, how it shows up, and in particular, how it can hurt men and wound men. And so my name is Shandra. I am one of the lead facilitators for CORE, and I help lead our men's immersion weekends as well. And I am here with Eskey, who is the CEO of CORE, as well as one of the main male facilitators at CORE.
Yeah, great to be here with you, Shandra. I'm really excited you're just setting up this topic and talking about it. I was like, my goodness, this is such a rich topic. So we're going to try to zoom in and nail some points here and hopefully share some insightful information, I hope, in just a little bit of time, right?
Yeah. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is, what is the shadow feminine? What do we mean when we say this or talk about this? And so the shadow feminine, essentially, you can think that us as human beings, we have a shadow and a gold. We have these defenses, these unconscious defenses, survivor strategies that you can think of as the shadow. And we also have wonderful golden strength, like, healthy qualities to us. And in particular, there's the shadow masculine and the shadow feminine. And they often interact with each other in really harmful ways. And the shadow feminine is, in particular, all the ways that we can try to pull on each other, manipulate another person for love, and especially to bring attention or awareness onto us. And so I'll speak to maybe some of the ways that the shadow feminine can show up, for example, in women. And so the shadow feminine is like this quality of, imagine if you're a guy, you're like doing something nice, perhaps for your partner, like you might be a woman, you make her dinner, you do the dishes, you do all these wonderful things. She steps in, she says, "Hey, that's so sweet, thanks so much, but you forgot to clean out the litter box." Mm-hmm. And it's this quality of like coming in, like saying something negative, derailing the situation in you, not really allowing a man to fully be seen, cutting him down. So yeah, the shadow feminine has a lot of qualities of like trying to cut men down, trying to manipulate them to do her bidding, what she wants, and manipulate him to stay, to give her attention, to give her love. Like there's a lot of really manipulative and kind of, it's hard to put your finger on exactly what the shadow feminine is.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add to what you said, Chandra, and to reiterate to anyone who may be watching this, the shadow is not the exclusive domain of women or the feminine. And I know Chandra said that, but I just want to be clear. We all have shadow running through us, masculine and feminine, and we as guys have our own shadow. But as I was thinking about the shadow feminine and listening to you, Chandra, I think there's a quality to it that is, for men, it's an I can't win quality.
Yes.
It's like I think that's the way men experience the shadow feminine, or being with a woman who's very much in the shadow feminine is like, I can't win. If I do X, if I do Y, if I'm this, I'm that, it's like it has this feeling of like pulling the life out and there's no way to win it. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, yes, that totally makes sense. It's that I can't win. It's almost like that there's these set of rules or expectations of behaviors that are actually never told to you, whether this is, I think of growing up as if you were a young boy and that this is what you experienced from mom. You do everything to try to gain mom's love, do the right thing, do what, she needs to gain love, but then it's like you mess up in something. You just can't win. You can't be enough. You can't meet all the needs, or
right.
You can't do it right.
Yeah. And as you and I've talked about before, that's kind of comparing that to the shadow masculine, which can sometimes be much more direct and much more aggressive and much more destructive in a direct way, kind of blatant. And there's a quality to the shadow feminine which kind of pulls the life out from the back, instead of like this kind of energy. It's just it's like I can't win.
Yeah, I almost think of sometimes that shadow masculine is like, you're a piece of crap, right? But the shadow feminine won't say that to you, but it will make you feel that of like, why do I feel so bad about myself? I feel negative, I feel bad, like, but it's hard to point to that either through little things of what are said, the little gestures, like you just end up feeling like crap, or like your humanity isn't honored or recognized, or your goodness isn't honored or recognized.
Yeah, so well said.
Yeah. And I think, and why we wanted to bring this up today is because a lot of society doesn't talk about the shadow feminine. Because right in society today, there's a lot of emphasis on the shadow masculine, which has caused a lot of harm. It's important to always actually name the shadow, to bring it into the light, to name the harm that has been caused, so that that shadow can start to untwist, right? It can even not have as much of an effect on us when we can name it, point to it. And so, in society, we're seeing a lot of how the shadow feminine has caused harm, or the shadow masculine has caused harm, pardon me, especially with things like the Me Too movement. But the issue with some of this of not naming the shadow feminine then as well is it continues to play into kind of this dominant narrative or idea or story that the shadow masculine is and men are always the perpetrators, and women and the shadow feminine are always the victims. But we know that there's more truth than that, that there are ways that we harm each other, that we interact with each other, and even the insidiousness of the shadow feminine, which actually arises because we've been hurt, right? Or any shadow that arises happens because we've been hurt. We haven't been met with love. We haven't been protected. And so our own shadow feminine arises as women, which then it's like, yeah, imagine you keep meeting the men in your life, whether coworkers, friends, sons, or partners, with this idea of you can't win. You'll never be enough. You will never meet my expectations. And it like just demeans their humanity, like again and again and again, till at some point that shadow masculine blows up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Comes out. And so it's important to name because they play into each other. It's not only the shadow masculine, which is ruling our society. The shadow feminine is also there and insidious and impacting us all.
Yes, Shandra, I so appreciate you saying that. Yeah, we have to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations around the shadow feminine and not just the shadow masculine. And they do absolutely play in. And one of the questions that we can ask ourselves is just, are we in the territory of shadow, period? Like what's my part? What's her part? What's his part? Like they do interplay like this. And if we're not willing to pull it out of the shadows and bring consciousness to it, and as you said, that can be a particular quality of the shadow feminine, which it's a little more kind of unconscious and sometimes not so easy to put our finger on. And we don't want to go there. But if we don't lovingly and compassionately call out shadow in both men and women and whatever forms it comes up, then we're just going to be stuck in the same patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we don't lovingly, as you just said, if we don't lovingly call out, notice, shine the light on the shadow and how it can arise, as well as even take this look and gander into look into how I've been impacted by shadow, and even how does that shadow live and show up in me?
Yeah.
Right. Because without that, then if we're always just pointing the fingers, blaming everyone else, like we're just going into even more shadow then essentially.
Yes. Yeah. We have to be willing to look at that. We have to be willing to look at the shadow in us is always, we'll talk about that in just a second, I think. Yeah. But you had another point or a question here you wanted to talk about, yeah?
Well, yeah, I was just curious. So, one of the things we want to talk about today was what is the impact then of the shadow feminine, particularly on men? And I'm curious if you'd be willing to share any of that in your experience. You already spoke to this feeling of like, I just can't win. Yeah. And how does that impact you? Like either from growing up, in partnership, in work? I'm just curious.
Well, I think
you'd be willing to share.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sharp impact. It impacts me in my self-image. It impacts me in how I think about myself, how I hold myself, and how I interact then with other people in the world. And it's easy to get caught in that shadow loop, back and forth between two people. And I think for men in particular, there are two things that are really important. One is we have to be willing to look at the imprint we got from mom. This is really important. This is where this is not to make mom wrong. This is beautiful, loving, to the best of her ability person, but she, like the rest of us, has a shadow. And it imprints us as boys and as young women, as daughters, as sons and daughters, we get imprinted. It is the most important relationship, the mother-child, and people may feel differently about that, but in my experience, it is the single most important formative relationship. And so one way to kind of think is what are the stories I carry about myself? What are the stories that I carry all from, you know, I'm almost 50. What are the stories I've carried for 40 decades? And how do they imprint on me, and how do they show up in my relationship now? And I think so that's the first thing, is kind of look at those early relationships with mom. But I think the way the shadow feminine can impact men most strongly is that the masculine wants to be a hero. And this is for women too, but the way the masculine shows up, and specifically, particularly for men, I think we want to be loving, we want to be self-donating, we want to be generous, we want to win, we want you to win, you know, we give us a battle we can win.
Mm.
And to live in the space of I can't win. To live in the space of I can't win is, I think, is excruciating, you know, for men. To live in that shadow, the story of that shadow, of how we, and that's perpetuated by us and by women who experience, you know, who are coming from the shadow feminine, but it's also, it lives in us, right? This is not a blame game. It's like, this is what these two shadows do. And I think for men, we want to be heroic, and we want to be loving, and we want to be generous. And I really think it's a fundamental thing, Shandra, for men. And it's not happening in a lot of ways in our society. We have to be a self-donating act of love in our life. We can go our whole lifetime and not be that. And this is not good. And we're not happy. And we want to do that. And so I think in the ways that we in our relationships can win and succeed and be loving and be generous and be heroic and truly generous, man, that's powerful. And as much as that I can't win dynamic comes up, and as much as a part of the shadow feminine plays in that, it's a killer.
Mm. Yeah, I hear that like one of the big impacts is not only how do you, like, men view themselves, but this piece of like, you want to show up and win. And I just imagine then to go through day in and day out of like, I can't win. It's never going to work. I can't do it. I can't do it right. I can't do enough. Like, you always need more. Like, I imagine something about that would be almost like really defeating, and like, rather than life giving, like life draining.
Yeah, life draining as opposed to life giving. Yeah, as you were just saying that, I was just thinking back on kind of the way I trace that red thread in my life. If we had more time, I'd be happy to talk about my own story. Probably not today, but you know, I can trace that right back to my childhood, and that kind of growing with I can't win, and that kind of life draining thing. And I'm so sensitive to that. And so, you know, I have a wound around that in our language. I have a wound around that. And that's where I've got to bring my own consciousness and my awareness to, you know, how that shows up in me, how that shadow comes up.
Yeah. I think then transitions beautifully, and you already started talking about this, is what does it look like then to heal? What does it look like to, how can men do work around the shadow feminine, or why?
I want to jump in this one immediately, Shandra, because this is the gift that you're bringing right at this exact moment. I think the single biggest thing that men can do to heal with the shadow feminine is to be in the presence of women who are, one, aware that they have a shadow, just like I'm. If we are not aware that we have shadows, watch out, we're dangerous. So to be in the presence of a woman like yourself, who's brought so much consciousness and awareness to your own shadow and gold, that self-awareness is the first thing. And then the second thing is to be in your presence as you cultivate your healthy self. So it's when we as men can put ourselves in the sphere, in the field with women who have that awareness, right? That I've got a shadow side and I've got a golden side, and I want to cultivate my goal. I want to step into my healthy self. And I just like, that makes all the difference, Shandra. I mean, you're one of those people. Britta, my wife, is one of those people. The women who facilitate at CORE are those people. It doesn't mean that we're perfect. They're not perfect. But to me, like, that's the work. You cannot do it kind of thinking about it. You cannot do it by imagining women. And right now I'm with you in this live conversation, and I'm in the field of I don't feel, you know, this is a beautiful place to be, right? It's a beautiful place to be in the presence of someone who's wanting to explore and wanting to create more generosity. So that's a long answer, but that's the very first thing I would do is
Yeah.
seek those women out and those situations out. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. I mean, I think there is something about, right, doing that work with a woman that knows her own shadow, or at least is owning her shadows, understands she has shadows, and can hold space for that then, and can hold space for the impact that that has had, right? The harm that that has caused. So then that harm of the shadow feminine that has been caused by the shadow feminine can be brought again into the light and to be met with love. Because what I imagine a lot of those impacts are, and what I've heard from a lot of men, and actually someone wrote in the comments a really great point, which is like there's learned helplessness that can come up. And I just imagine we get these stories of, I'm not good enough, I never will be, I can't win, right? And so eventually then that's the story you believe about yourself. And so then to say like, well, one, that didn't originate with you. You weren't born into the world thinking I can't win, right? That, or like that there's something fundamentally like wrong or flawed with you. Like at some point growing up, you learned that. And so being able to pinpoint and hear like the ways from like how has the shadow feminine done that or shown up is like almost, I feel like creates that sense of distance where you can see, oh, this is where this originated. Oh, got it. So then you can see, and what's the pain, and have that pain met with presence, met with listening, met with love, and especially by women who are doing their work, then just that pain that's been caused, I imagine it starts to untwist, where then you can start to learn and, okay, this is what it means to stand in my healthy self as a man.
Yes,
So
yes.
when
And
I feel the, yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say that just as this primordial imprint comes from mom, comes from the feminine, comes from a woman, first and foremost, that deep first relationship, there's so much healing that can come from a deep, loving interaction, as you said, with the golden feminine. Like it heals in a way that, and I'm all for men's work, but it heals in a way that working with men doesn't. That's a bit of a different territory. This is something really special to have a woman hold that space. And yes, Chandra, it can bring healing right to that place. I can say that as a man. You know, it's like I said earlier, I still have that wound. Well, we have our scars, but the scar is a healed wound. You know, I still am conscious of the scar, but it's been healed by the presence of me being willing to do my work with loving, conscious, aware women like yourself. And then we get to do the same. You know, there's again, a conversation for another day, but then we as men, when we do our work, then we can hold this reciprocal space for women. Yeah. There's a whole other world over there that needs healing too, right? But yeah, I think it starts right here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I just think, you know, there's something, the last thing I'll maybe say around that, there's something about one learning what the shadow is and then being able to actually place your finger on it, to point to it, to name it. That is powerful, because especially the insidiousness of the shadow feminine, the murkiness of it, there's something like, oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's what, because again, it's not like you are crap. It's like somehow you've learned to feel like crap. So it's like, oh, that's what that was. This is what's caused that. So then, right, rather than react with your own shadow masculine and your own, or like your own version of that, or own stories or defenses, you can be like, oh, that's what's happening. Now what does it look like to ground in my healthy self and meet this, rather than take this on, rather than get caught in her undertow, the shadow feminine's undertow? What does it look like to be anchored?
Yes, right? That's great. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And that anchor we can take with us into the presence of people who are not so aware of their shadow, right? Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to say, Lee? I know we were going to like plan 10 minutes. Here we are almost minute 20, because it's such a rich topic. And that is why we have this men's immersion weekend coming up, which is about, for men, being with two female facilitators who are holding that space of the golden feminine, who are naming the shadow feminine, teaching about it, listening and hearing its impact, so that way that healing can occur. So we have a men's weekend coming up, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to talk about this. And that men's weekend is November 13th and 14th, I believe. But I just wanted to see, like, in such a rich topic, I know we're not gonna be able to cover everything, even like in an hour, whatever. Right. But is there anything else you want to say or note about this?
Oh, I just think it's such a rare opportunity. We created, and you created, CORE created these men's immersion weekends just for this. I don't know any other place where this happens, where we're this loving feminine presence and women who are willing to step into their gold facilitate men to be real and honest about our wounding and our scars and our hurts and what we want and what we need and what's true. And that is such a healing process. And it's a unique thing. And I'm just so appreciative. I'll just say it again, I'm so appreciative of women who are willing to step up and hold this kind of space for us. So if any guys out there, as they step into this, if you feel a call to this, if you want to take a risk and see what's on the other side of stepping into that wounding and that fear and that pain, it's a beautiful opportunity to do it. And just a thank you to Shandra and to you and all the other women who are holding this kind of space.
Well, thank you for showing up. It's my honor. And thanks for the great conversation today, Lee.
Yeah, it is a topic that could go on for an hour. So another time we'll have a rich conversation around this. Yeah. Yes,
can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure to put all the links and the details and everything about the men's immersion weekend in the comments. But for any of you listening, thank you so much for joining us today. Love to hear your thoughts on how you notice the shadow feminine has shown up in your life or even within yourself. And wishing you all a wonderful day.
Yes, indeed.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.